In the world of fast money and digital loopholes, one woman built an empire in the shadows of the gig economy. Priscila Barbosa, a Brazilian immigrant, arrived in the United States in 2018 with little more than ambition and a sharp mind for deception. Within a few years, she orchestrated one of the most elaborate fraud schemes ever seen in the rideshare and delivery industry, making thousands of dollars a month, all while staying under the radar, until she didn't. At first, Barbosa was just another worker in the gig economy, driving for companies like Uber, Lyft, and DoorDash. But she quickly realized something. There were people willing to pay top dollar for access to these platforms without undergoing background checks. And with that, a criminal opportunity was born. Using stolen identities and fraudulent documents, Barbosa created over 2,000 fake driver accounts. These accounts were then rented or sold to people who couldn't qualify: undocumented immigrants, individuals with criminal records, or those banned from the platforms. At her peak, she was raking in up to $10,000 a month, while the gig companies remained clueless. But this wasn't just a side hustle. It was a full-scale operation. Barbosa's network included hackers, document forgers, and middlemen who helped recruit drivers. She had a systematic approach to bypassing security measures on platforms like Uber, Lyft, Instacart, and DoorDash, making her fraud almost undetectable. The first step was obtaining stolen personal information: social security numbers, driver's licenses, and background check details. Barbosa and her associates sourced these identities from the dark web, data breaches, and even phishing scams. Phishing is one of the most common methods cybercriminals use to steal personal information. It involves sending fake emails or text messages that appear to be from legitimate companies, such as banks, government agencies, or gig economy platforms. The messages trick victims into providing their personal details, such as usernames, passwords, or social security numbers. Once Barbosa and her team had access to this information, they could easily create fraudulent accounts on rideshare and delivery platforms. To make the accounts appear legitimate, Barbosa used forged driver's licenses and social security cards, which were often high-quality counterfeits created by document forgers within her network. But how exactly were these documents made? The process was sophisticated, combining stolen data, high-tech printing methods, and deep knowledge of security features used in government-issued IDs. The first step in document forgery is gathering real personal information. Barbosa's network obtained stolen identities from various sources, including data breaches, the dark web, and phishing attacks. This gave them access to names, birth dates, social security numbers, and even past addresses, details essential for creating a believable fake ID. Once the stolen identity information was secured, Barbosa's team moved on to the design phase. Professional forgers used high-resolution scans of real driver's licenses and social security cards to create near-perfect replicas. Specialized software like Photoshop or more advanced design tools were used to mimic every detail: fonts, layouts, holograms, and watermarks. Some forgers even purchased templates from the dark web, allowing them to easily modify details like names and photos while maintaining an authentic look. Others reverse-engineered real IDs to extract the microprint and fine details that make documents seem legitimate at first glance. A regular office printer. To make the forgeries realistic, Barbosa's network used specialized printers capable of replicating security features, including holograms, UV features, microprinting, embossed lettering, barcode and magnetic strip encoding. One of the trickiest parts of document forgery is the photo. Barbosa's team had two methods for handling this: face matching with stolen photos. If the stolen identity already had an image from a leaked database, such as past driver's license records or social media, the team would edit and adjust it to match government ID standards. And the second method is deepfake AI-generated photos. When no real photo was available, Barbosa's network used AI to generate a face similar to the identity they were forging. These images looked natural and realistic enough to pass most security checks. To further evade detection, Barbosa and her team made sure to slightly alter each ID, changing minor details like address formatting or photo size so that no two fakes looked identical. Once the fake documents were completed, they were distributed to customers through a variety of discrete methods. Some were sent digitally, where drivers printed them themselves. Others were physically mailed using drop-shipping techniques, often routed through multiple addresses to avoid tracking. Barbosa also used encrypted messaging apps like WhatsApp and Telegram to coordinate deliveries and payments, ensuring the law. Once the accounts were created, they were monetized in two ways: rental and outright sale. She rented out accounts for a weekly fee, allowing unverified drivers to work under someone else's name. She also sold accounts outright, charging up to $1,000 per account, sometimes more for high-earning cities like New York or Los Angeles. To keep payments discreet, she used encrypted messaging apps and processed transactions through cryptocurrency, prepaid debit cards, and even peer-to-peer payment apps like Cash App and Zelle. This helped her avoid detection by both banks and law enforcement. But Barbosa didn't just rely on fake accounts. She also found ways to maximize earnings without ever hitting the road. Using GPS spoofing software, she manipulated location data to trick gig apps into thinking rides, and deliveries were completed when they never even started. For example, a driver using her fraudulent account could accept a trip from an airport to a downtown hotel. But instead of actually driving, they'd use software to make it appear as though they were moving on the map. The passenger would see an arrival time, the ride would complete as expected, and the fare would be charged, all without a single mile driven. She also ran a similar scam with food delivery platforms, where she used bots to accept high-paying orders, mark them as picked up, and then instantly complete the delivery. Restaurants and customers would be left confused, but Barbosa's network collected the payouts without delivering a single meal. Barbosa also gamed the referral system. Many gig apps offer sign-up bonuses for new drivers, sometimes as high as $500 per referral. She created a cycle where her fake accounts referred each other, triggering endless bonuses that went straight into her pocket. Additionally, she leveraged multi-accounting tactics, where a single device could run multiple driver accounts simultaneously using virtual private networks, VPNs, and device cloaking software. This allowed her to bypass detection and keep the money flowing from multiple sources at once. Her empire stretched beyond the U.S., with ties to Brazil and other parts of Latin America. Fake licenses, stolen social security numbers, and burner phones became tools of the trade, and as long as the money flowed, Barbosa felt untouchable. But no fraud empire lasts forever. And in early 2024, Barbosa's time ran out. At first, Barbosa's operation remained under the radar, but over time, her growing network left behind digital footprints that caught the attention of both rideshare companies and federal authorities. The fraud was simply becoming too big to ignore. The first red flags came from gig platforms themselves. Security teams at Uber and Lyft noticed a sharp increase in driver accounts registered with duplicate IP addresses and inconsistent identity verification patterns. Some accounts were flagged when different drivers were logging in from multiple locations at the same time. One driver might be in Miami, while another using the same credentials was accepting rides in Los Angeles. That level of inconsistency was impossible without fraud. Additionally, suspicious patterns in new driver accounts, such as many accounts being created from the same device or location, began raising concerns. Some fraudulent accounts were even linked to the same bank accounts, despite being registered under different names. These irregularities triggered an internal audit within multiple rideshare and delivery companies. Behind the scenes, digital forensic experts were already piecing together the puzzle. Federal agencies, including the FBI and Homeland Security, were tipped off by financial institutions monitoring unusual transactions. Barbosa's operation relied on large cash deposits, cryptocurrency payments, and prepaid debit cards, common hallmarks of money laundering and fraud. Investigators used device forensics to trace logins and transactions across multiple states. They uncovered that many of Barbosa's fraudulent driver accounts were accessing the same cloud storage to download forged documents. This cloud storage led them directly to an encrypted folder containing thousands of stolen identities, fake driver's licenses, and social security cards. Even more damning, a group of undercover investigators posed as buyers, reaching out to Barbosa's network to purchase fake accounts. Through these sting operations, authorities gathered critical evidence including conversations, payments, and even tutorials explaining how to bypass Uber and Lyft's security systems. That was the final nail in the coffin. Once the case was airtight, law enforcement was ready to make their move. In January 2024, Barbosa was located in Orlando, Florida, where she had been living under an assumed identity. She had no idea that federal agents were watching her every move. On the morning of her arrest, officers executed multiple search warrants, one at her residence and another at a co-conspirator's apartment where fraudulent document production was taking place. When authorities raided her home, they found an elaborate setup: multiple laptops, burner phones, identity forging equipment, and stacks of fake IDs. Files on her computer contained detailed logs of her transactions, including client lists and earnings reports, which made it impossible for her to deny involvement. Barbosa was arrested without incident, though sources say she was visibly stunned as officers placed her in handcuffs. She was charged with conspiracy to commit wire fraud, aggravated identity theft, and money laundering, offenses that could have carried a much longer sentence if she hadn't taken a plea deal. Barbosa's arrest made headlines, exposing just how vulnerable the gig economy was to identity fraud. Companies scrambled to improve their security measures, introducing stricter identity verification processes and AI-driven fraud detection systems. But for many, it was too late. Thousands of drivers had already operated under stolen identities, and gig companies had lost millions in fraudulent earnings. Despite facing up to 20 years in prison, Barbosa pleaded guilty to lesser charges in exchange for cooperation with investigators. She was sentenced to 3 years in federal prison, a surprisingly light sentence given the scale of her operation. Many believed she got off easy, while others saw it as a sign that the system itself was flawed enough to allow such crimes to flourish for years. Priscila Barbosa's story is more than just a tale of crime. It's a warning. In a world where digital platforms dominate our daily lives, the line between innovation and exploitation has never been thinner. Barbosa saw an opportunity in the cracks of the system, and for a while she thrived, but in the end, the house always wins. Was she a mastermind, a hustler, or just another player in the game? No one knows.